Welcome. This is not just a story. This is not just a biography. This is an emotional journey. This is the life of a man who made the world laugh but lived in pain for years. This is the story of Jim Carrey, one of the greatest comedians and actors in the history of film, but also one of the most lonely, broken, and misunderstood human beings off-screen. In this video, you will learn more than just the timeline of his life. You will learn what true suffering looks like, what real dedication feels like, and what it takes to keep going when everything is falling apart. You will learn how a boy from a broken, poor Canadian family who once lived in a van became one of the most famous and highest-paid actors in the world. Not by luck, but by relentless belief, mental training, and emotional strength. This video will help you learn powerful life lessons from Jim Carrey's real story. Understand how to handle failure, depression, rejection, and identity crisis. Improve your English by listening to easy, clear storytelling in a real emotional way. Train your brain to think clearly, feel deeply, and express powerfully in English. Because this story is told in simple, slow, clear English, it is perfect for English beginners and learners who want to improve their vocabulary, understanding, and listening power while feeling something real. So sit back, listen carefully, feel everything, and get ready for a journey that might change your life. Part 1. The boy who couldn't afford to dream. Jim Carrey's childhood and family pain. Jim Carrey was born on January 17, 1962, in a small town called Newmarket in Ontario, Canada. His full name is James Eugene Carrey. He was the youngest of 4 children in a lower-middle-class family. His father, Percy Carrey, was a musician and accountant. His mother, Kathleen Carrey, was a homemaker who suffered from chronic illness and depression. From the outside, it looked like a normal family. But inside that house, there was a lot of emotional pain. His father was a talented saxophone player. He had dreams of becoming a professional jazz musician, but he gave up those dreams to support his family. He worked as an accountant. Even though Percy was funny, full of character, and talented, he never truly lived his dreams. This made a deep impression on young Jim. Jim once said something powerful about his father. "My father could have been a great comedian, but he didn't believe that was possible for him. So he made a safe choice. Instead, he became an accountant. And when I was 12 years old, he was let go from that safe job. That taught me something. You can fail at what you don't want, so you might as well take a chance on doing what you love." That idea of taking a chance on your dream came from watching his father fail at the safe path. When Jim was around 12 years old, everything collapsed. His father lost his job and suddenly the family had no money. They went from living a simple but okay life to being homeless. Yes, Jim Carrey, the man who became a Hollywood star, was once homeless. The family had to live in a van for several months. Not a trailer, a van. They parked it near a relative's home. Sometimes they stayed in tents. There were no showers, no comfort, and no privacy. Jim and his brother worked as janitors at a factory to help their family survive. They would go to school during the day and clean toilets and floors at night. He was just a boy, but he didn't have the luxury to just be a kid. This was not a funny life. It was hard, dirty, and emotionally crushing. Jim started to develop anger, pain, and a deep need to escape. But he didn't escape with drugs or violence. He escaped with something else. While the outside world was difficult and painful, Jim discovered that inside himself there was a strange kind of magic. He could make people laugh. He started doing funny faces, voices, and impressions. First for his sick mother, who was often depressed and lying in bed. She was his first audience. He would walk into her room and suddenly become someone else. A silly character, a monster, a news anchor, a politician. His mother would smile, then laugh harder. For a few minutes, her pain would disappear. Jim realized something powerful. If I can make her laugh, maybe I can make the world laugh. Maybe that's my superpower. At school, Jim was awkward, but he had one weapon: he could be anyone. He would stand in front of his class and do full comedy performances even as a teenager. Teachers didn't know how to handle him. Some punished him. Others allowed him to perform at the end of class if he behaved during lessons. He started writing letters to the Carol Burnett Show, a famous comedy program, saying he wanted to be on their show. He was a dreamer even when reality was hell. At age 15, Jim Carrey tried his first real stand-up performance at a comedy club in Toronto. It was a disaster. He froze on stage, forgot his lines, and nobody laughed. He was humiliated. He walked off stage feeling like he had no talent at all. But that's when something important happened. Instead of quitting, he went back the next week, then the next, then the next. He started adjusting his performance, learning timing, studying great comedians, practicing new voices, new jokes, new ways to move his body. He failed again, and then slowly started to win. By age 17, he dropped out of school to become a full-time comedian. His family supported him, especially his father, who drove him to every comedy club gig. Imagine that. The same man who gave up his own dream was now helping his son chase his. This is one of the most famous moments in Jim Carrey's early life. In 1985, Jim was still struggling. He was doing comedy clubs, working hard, but not famous yet. One day, he drove up to Mulholland Drive, a beautiful hilltop in Los Angeles where rich people lived. He sat there looking at the city lights below and did something strange but powerful. He took out his checkbook, wrote himself a fake check for $10 million, and dated it for Thanksgiving 1995. He wrote in the memo, "For acting services rendered." He kept that check in his wallet for years. Every time he felt like giving up, he looked at it. And guess what? In 1994, 1 year before his deadline, he got paid $10 million for a movie called Dumb and Dumber. After years of struggle on stage, driving to small comedy clubs with his father, doing weird voices and characters in front of tiny audiences, Jim Carrey finally caught the attention of people in the television and film industry. At this time, he was still in Canada, but he had now started performing regularly in the United States. He was becoming known for his wild energy, elastic face, and unbelievable impressions. Nobody had ever seen someone like him before. He didn't just tell jokes, he became different people on stage. His face could twist and stretch like rubber. His body moved like a cartoon character. He had the timing of a master and the courage of a madman. Producers began to take notice. In 1984, Jim Carrey finally got his first leading role in a television series called The Duck Factory. It was a comedy show where he played a young animator, a cartoon artist who had just joined a production studio that made animated shows. This was a small but important step. It gave him real experience in front of the camera. He was now a professional actor. But the show was not a success. The show The Duck Factory was canceled after 1 season. Jim was disappointed but not destroyed. He kept going. He continued performing stand-up comedy in small clubs, acting in small film roles, and trying out for new opportunities. During this time, he also appeared in several movies. Once Bitten, 1985. A vampire comedy, Peggy Sue Got Married, 1986. A romantic time travel film where he had a small role, and Earth Girls Are Easy, 1988. A colorful sci-fi romantic comedy in which Jim played a quirky alien. None of these roles made him a star, but they helped him learn, improve, and gain valuable experience. Behind the scenes, Jim wasn't just acting, he was writing, developing characters, and planning something bigger. And then, in the early 1990s, his entire life changed. In 1990, Jim Carrey was cast in a new television sketch comedy show called In Living Color. The show, created by the Wayans brothers, featured mostly African-American comedians, actors, and dancers. It was fresh, loud, wild, and completely different from anything else on television. Jim Carrey was the only white actor in the main cast, but he stood out instantly. He created unforgettable characters like Fire Marshal Bill, a terrifying fire safety officer with a burned face who gave dangerous advice in a frightening voice, and Vera DeMilo, a muscular, eccentric woman who appeared in a parody of fitness shows. Audiences couldn't believe what they were seeing. Who was this man? How could his face move like that? How could his energy be so explosive and fearless? Jim Carrey was becoming a star, but not just a TV star. People started saying, "This guy is going to be huge. He's going to be the next big thing." And they were right. The year 1994 became one of the most important years in Jim Carrey's life. In just 1 year, he released 3 massive Hollywood hits: Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, The Mask, and Dumb and Dumber. Let's look at each one and how they shaped his career. Ace Ventura, Pet Detective. Released in February 1994, Ace Ventura was a silly comedy about a strange private detective who specialized in animal-related cases. Nobody expected much from it, but Jim Carrey exploded on screen. His energy, voice, movements, and fearless physical comedy were unlike anything Hollywood had ever seen. Audiences laughed so hard they couldn't breathe. The film became a surprise box office success, making over $100 million worldwide. Overnight, Jim Carrey became a superstar. This was the role that introduced the world to his madness, his genius, and his fearless comedic style. The Mask. Just 5 months later, in July 1994, Jim released The Mask, a movie that mixed comedy, romance, action, and groundbreaking special effects. He played Stanley Ipkiss, a shy banker who finds a magical mask that turns him into a confident, cartoon-like superhero with a green face. This film was perfect for Jim's style. It allowed him to go completely wild and animated, just like his stage characters. But it also carried a love story, a message about confidence and identity, and visually stunning effects. The movie was a massive hit, earning over $350 million worldwide. Jim was now not just a comedian, he was a leading Hollywood actor. The film also introduced the world to Cameron Diaz, who made her debut as the female lead. Her chemistry with Jim was electric, and together they became one of the most iconic on-screen duos of the decade. Dumb and Dumber. Finally, in December 1994, Jim starred in Dumb and Dumber alongside Jeff Daniels. The movie followed two kind-hearted but foolish friends on a ridiculous road trip across America. It was outrageous, hilarious, and full of unforgettable moments. Jim was paid $10 million for this film, the exact amount he had written on his fake check years earlier. He had manifested his dream. He had reached the top. Now Jim Carrey was a household name. Everyone knew him. Everyone wanted to work with him. He was on magazine covers, talk shows, posters, and billboards. He was the funniest man in Hollywood and the highest paid. But success came with a cost. While Jim's career was exploding, his personal life was falling apart. He had married a woman named Melissa Womer in 1987. She was a waitress and actress, and together they had a daughter, Jane Erin Carrey, born the same year. Jane would later grow up to become a singer and even auditioned for American Idol. But Jim and Melissa's marriage was full of tension. As Jim's fame skyrocketed, their relationship suffered. The pressure of Hollywood, constant media attention, and his demanding career made it difficult to maintain a normal family life. In 1995, they divorced. This was deeply painful for Jim. He loved his daughter and had tried to keep the family together. But fame had changed everything. Around this time, Jim began dating Lauren Holly, his co-star from Dumb and Dumber. They married in 1996, but the marriage lasted less than a year. Another emotional heartbreak. Jim was beginning to understand that being a superstar was not the same as being happy. From the outside, he had everything: money, fame, power, respect, and millions of fans. But inside, he felt empty. He was constantly performing, pretending, and becoming someone else. But who was he really? He once said, "I spent years playing characters. Then I realized I didn't know who I was anymore." He began struggling with depression. He would disappear from public life for weeks, spending time alone and reading spiritual books. He started questioning the meaning of fame, identity, and the self. This was the beginning of a long, painful emotional journey that would define the next chapter of his life. But before that, Jim still had more unforgettable characters to bring to life. Part 2. The Mask comes off. Jim Carrey's search for meaning, identity, and truth. Studios were offering him millions of dollars for every film. He was a guaranteed box office hit. Audiences laughed, cheered, and celebrated everything he did. But something had started to shift deep inside Jim's heart. He had achieved everything he once dreamed of: money, fame, freedom, recognition. Yet something still felt missing. The laughter of the world wasn't filling the emptiness in his soul. He was beginning to question everything. Why am I doing this? Who am I when the camera is off? Why do I feel so alone even when everyone knows my name? These questions grew louder and louder in his mind. Eventually, Jim made a bold decision. He chose to take a new path, one that was more serious, more emotional, and far more dangerous. In the late 1990s, Jim began taking on serious roles that weren't just funny, but deep, dramatic, emotional, and philosophical. Many in Hollywood were skeptical. Jim Carrey is a comedian, they said. He can't do drama. But Jim didn't care. He wasn't doing it for them. He was doing it for himself, to explore his own truth, his pain, and his humanity. That decision changed everything. In 1998, Jim starred in The Truman Show, directed by Peter Weir. This movie was completely different from his earlier work, calm, intelligent, and emotionally profound. He played a man named Truman Burbank, who lived a happy, peaceful life in a perfect town, until he slowly realized that his entire life was fake. Everyone he knew was an actor. His wife was acting. His job was part of the show. Truman was the only real person living inside a massive television set, and millions of people were watching him every day without his knowledge. The story was about freedom, identity, control, and the search for truth. When audiences saw Jim Carrey in this role, they were stunned. He wasn't just funny. He was real, powerful, and deeply emotional. The Truman Show was a huge success. Critics praised it, audiences cried, and Jim won the Golden Globe Award for Best Actor. It was his first major step into serious acting, and he proved he could do much more than comedy. 1 year later, in 1999, Jim took on an even more difficult role. He played Andy Kaufman in Man on the Moon, directed by Milos Forman. Andy Kaufman was a strange, brilliant, and mysterious comedian from the 1970s, known for confusing audiences, making them laugh one moment and uncomfortable the next. Nobody ever knew if Andy was serious or joking. He was a magician of emotion. Jim didn't just act in this movie, he became Andy Kaufman. He used a technique called method acting, where the actor never breaks character, even when the cameras stop rolling. During filming, Jim was Andy all the time, on set, in his hotel room, in interviews, even in private conversations. It confused people, frustrated the director, and annoyed some co-stars. But Jim believed it was the only way to truly embody Andy. He even said he felt like Andy's spirit had possessed him. This wasn't just acting, it was transformation. The film was brilliant, showcasing Jim's full range as an actor and his obsession with identity and performance. Once again, he won the Golden Globe for Best Actor. But after the film, something strange happened. Jim felt lost. He had become someone else for so long that he no longer knew who Jim Carrey was. This marked the beginning of a deep psychological and emotional breakdown. In the early 2000s, Jim began stepping back from public life. He had reached the top of the entertainment world, but he didn't feel like a winner. He began struggling with depression. Some days he couldn't get out of bed. Other days he didn't want to see or talk to anyone. He started reading books on philosophy, consciousness, the ego, and spiritual awakening. In one interview, he said, "I was depressed, but depression is not sadness. It's your body saying, I don't want to be this character anymore." He realized that for years he had been playing roles, not just in movies but in life. The funny guy, the superstar, the nice guest on talk shows, the people pleaser. But deep down, he didn't feel like himself. This emotional pain led him to question everything. Who am I? What is this world? Why am I here? He stopped chasing fame. He stopped trying to be liked. He began letting go of the identity that made him famous. During this time, he also began painting and writing, creating hundreds of pieces of colorful, emotional, strange, and powerful art. It was a way to express feelings he couldn't put into words. One of the most painful chapters in Jim's life came in 2015. He had been in an on-and-off relationship with a young Irish woman named Catriona White, a makeup artist he met in 2012. Their relationship was passionate but complicated, full of breakups, reunions, emotional highs, and painful misunderstandings. In September 2015, shortly after another breakup, Catriona White died by suicide. She left a note mentioning Jim. His world collapsed. The media attacked him. Rumors spread. Lawsuits were filed by her family. Jim had to face not only the loss of someone he cared about, but also public judgment and blame. He went into deep silence. For months, he disappeared from public life, entering one of the darkest periods of his existence. In the years that followed, Jim began speaking about a powerful transformation happening within him. He started saying things that confused people. In interviews, he said, "There is no Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey is just a character I play." He began studying the works of Eckhart Tolle, Alan Watts, and other spiritual teachers. He embraced ideas of non-duality, the belief that the ego, the self, is an illusion. He spoke about the need to wake up from the story of who we think we are. Many people thought he had lost his mind. But he wasn't crazy, he was awakening. He said, "I used to be a guy who was just trying to become successful, get the girl, make the money, be special. But now I don't care because I know none of that is real. What's real is this moment. What's real is love. What's real is peace." Jim had stopped trying to be anyone. He had let go of all masks, not just the ones he wore in films, but the ones he wore in life. This new Jim was calm, clear, and deeply spiritual. He talked about energy, consciousness, and freedom from identity. Some people called it strange. Others called it enlightenment. But Jim didn't care. He had finally found peace. Not in money, not in fame, not in awards, but in silence, awareness, and truth. He stopped attending Hollywood events. He stopped giving interviews. He wasn't chasing film roles anymore. He wasn't even trying to be Jim Carrey. For most people, that would mean the end of their career. For Jim, it was the beginning of a new life. One not built on fame, wealth, or approval, but on self-discovery. To find out who he truly was, he had to lose everything he thought he was. For many years, Jim Carrey stayed away from the spotlight. He didn't attend award shows or appear in major films. People thought he had retired, but he wasn't hiding. He was healing. During this time, he immersed himself in reading about consciousness, philosophy, Buddhism, and spiritual awakening. He listened to teachers like Eckhart Tolle and Alan Watts, who spoke about the illusion of ego and the false self. One idea especially resonated with him: you are not your thoughts. You are not your story. You are not your name. You are the awareness behind it. Jim began meditating every day. He spent hours in silence. He painted. He walked alone. He observed his thoughts without attaching to them. He stopped trying to be someone and allowed himself to simply be. During this quiet period, Jim discovered a new passion: painting. Not for fame, not for galleries, not for approval, but as a form of emotional release and truth. He painted to express what words could not. He built a large art studio in his home and filled it with huge canvases. Some paintings were wild, some political, some spiritual, some childlike, and others haunting. Art became his therapy, his prayer, his voice. In 2017, a short documentary titled Jim Carrey, I Needed Color was released. In it, Jim said, "I think what makes someone an artist is that they make models of their inner life. They make something physical that represents what they feel inside." He also said, "Painting helps me bring out what I'm too afraid to say in words." His paintings began to gain recognition, not because he was Jim Carrey the celebrity, but because they were raw, emotional, and honest reflections of a man who had finally stopped performing and started living. Would you like me to continue rewriting the rest of the story from here, the later part of his life and reflections, in this same narrative style? Jim Carrey's paintings began appearing in art galleries, and people realized he wasn't just a comedian or an actor. He was a true artist in every sense. He slowly began returning to public life, but he wasn't the same man the world remembered. He looked different, with a long gray beard, simple clothes, and a calm, gentle voice. He no longer cared about fame or impressing people. Instead, he shared deep, strange, and powerful thoughts about life. At public events, reporters would ask him simple questions like, "Jim, what are you wearing tonight?" And he would respond with something completely unexpected. "None of this is real. There is no me. There are just things happening. We are not the stars of the show. We are the light passing through it." These statements shocked people. Some said he had gone crazy. Others said he had become enlightened. But Jim didn't care what anyone thought anymore. He had seen the truth behind the curtain of fame, and now he wanted to help others see it too. Jim began openly talking about depression, the danger of living behind a fake identity, and the power of self-awareness. He said, "Depression is your avatar telling you it's tired of being the character you're playing." He encouraged people to step back from the false image they present to the world, to stop performing and start being real. He also became an advocate for mental health awareness, speaking to students, universities, and young artists. His message was not be famous, but be free. He said, "I have no ambition anymore. I don't care what happens. I'm free. The only thing I do now is choose what feels honest and kind and true." After years away from Hollywood, Jim returned to acting, but only for projects that felt meaningful. In 2018, he starred in the television series Kidding, where he played a children's TV host named Jeff Pickles. The show wasn't comedy. It was dark, emotional, and deeply human. A story about a man who teaches happiness to children while suffering from the loss of his own child. The role mirrored Jim's real-life pain and growth. Critics praised his performance as one of his most honest and vulnerable. He later appeared in Sonic the Hedgehog, 2020, and its 2022 sequel, playing the eccentric villain Dr. Robotnik. The role was wild and energetic, a glimpse of the old Jim, full of playful madness. Yet he remained grounded. He didn't do press tours or chase publicity. He acted when he wanted to, and disappeared into silence when he needed peace. Jim began sharing powerful speeches online, at graduation ceremonies and interviews, about ego, fear, creativity, and life. One of his most famous moments came at Maharishi University in 2014, where he said, "So many of us choose our path out of fear disguised as practicality. What we really want seems impossibly out of reach, so we never dare to ask the universe for it. I'm saying, I'm the proof. You can ask the universe for it." That speech went viral, inspiring millions. In another talk, he said, "The effect you have on others is the most valuable currency there is." Jim was no longer just a comedian. He had become a philosopher, a teacher, a guide for lost souls. By 2022, after the release of Sonic the Hedgehog 2, he announced his retirement from acting, saying, "I've done enough. I'm retiring. I like my quiet life." He now lives simply, painting, writing, reading, walking in nature, and sitting in silence. He isn't chasing success or attention. He isn't proving anything. He's just being. Part 3, The Man Who Looked Beyond the Curtain. Jim Carrey's truth about death, love, God, and the real meaning of life. After years of silence, heartbreak, and spiritual awakening, Jim Carrey reemerged. Not as a movie star or comedian, but as a messenger. He no longer wanted to entertain people. He wanted to wake them up from the illusion of fame, the trap of identity, and the pain of pretending to be something they are not. And it began with the most personal part of his life. His daughter, Jane Erin Carrey, and the quiet bond that never broke. Jim has one child, born in 1987 with his first wife, Melissa Womer, long before he became famous. When Jim's career exploded in the 1990s, he was constantly traveling, filming, and doing press. The spotlight was always on him while his daughter grew up mostly in the background. Jim later admitted that he made mistakes. Not because he didn't care, but because he didn't know how to balance fame and family. He said, "I was chasing success, not realizing that the greatest success is being present." As Jane grew older, she followed her own path in music. She became a singer-songwriter, quiet, thoughtful, and talented. In 2012, she auditioned for American Idol, not using her father's name for attention, but standing there as herself. Jim supported her privately, without publicity or fanfare. He didn't do interviews or show up on camera. He simply let her have her moment, free from his shadow. This showed something profound. Jim was learning to be a father, not a celebrity. Their relationship, once distant, began to heal in quiet ways. Private conversations, gentle encouragement, and mutual respect. His thoughts on death. After losing Catriona White, Jim's understanding of death changed forever. He no longer feared it. He said, "Catriona's passing didn't destroy me. It woke me up. It made me realize how temporary this whole game is. All the things we think are important, money, fame, approval, are dust." He began to see death not as an ending, but as a transition. He read spiritual texts, meditated on impermanence, and practiced detachment. Not in a cold way, but with peace. He said, "The body dies, the mind fades, but awareness remains. What you truly are is not your name, not your story. You are what watches all of it." Jim learned to let go, of people, of roles, of the constant need to hold on. "I'm learning to die before dying," he said, meaning to let go of the ego while still alive. This, he believed, made him more alive than ever. Because when you stop fearing death, you start living with pure honesty. His thoughts on God. Jim grew up in a Catholic family. As a child, he prayed, went to church, and followed the rules of religion. But after his pain, loss, and awakening, his idea of God transformed completely. He no longer believed in a man watching from the sky. He believed God was everything, the energy behind every living being, the stillness behind every thought, the love within every face. He said, "God is not outside you. God is the space inside you, the silence, the peace, the awareness. That's God." This wasn't a belief system for him, it was something he felt. When he painted, walked alone, or quietly watched a leaf fall from a tree, he felt that divine stillness moving through everything. He said, "We are all God, expressing itself as human beings for a little while." People realized Jim Carrey wasn't just a comedian or actor. He was a true artist in every sense. His paintings began to be shown in art galleries, and people started to see a different side of him. Jim Carrey began returning to public life slowly, but he wasn't the same man the world remembered. He looked different, with a long gray beard, simple clothes, and a calm, slow voice. He no longer cared about fame or impressing people. Instead, he shared deep, strange, and powerful thoughts about life. At public events, reporters would ask him simple questions like, "Jim, what are you wearing tonight?" And he would respond with something completely unexpected. "None of this is real. There is no me. There are just things happening. We are not the stars of the show. We are just the light passing through it." These statements shocked people. Some said he had gone crazy. Others believed he had become enlightened. But Jim didn't care what anyone thought anymore. He had seen the truth behind the curtain of fame, and now he wanted to help others see it too. Jim began to talk openly about depression, the danger of building a fake identity, and the power of self-awareness. He once said, "Depression is your avatar telling you it's tired of being the character you're playing." He encouraged people to step back from the false selves they present to the world. He asked them to stop performing and start being real. He became an advocate for mental health awareness, speaking to students, universities, and young artists. His message wasn't "be famous." His message was "be free." He said, "I have no ambition anymore. I don't care what happens. I'm free. The only thing I do now is choose what feels honest, kind, and true." After years away from Hollywood, Jim returned to acting, but only for projects that felt meaningful. He starred in the television series Kidding, playing a children's TV host named Jeff Picarillo, also known as Mr. Pickles. The show wasn't a comedy. It was dark, emotional, and deeply human. A story about a man who teaches happiness to children while secretly suffering after losing his own child. The role mirrored Jim's own life and became one of his most honest performances. He also played Dr. Robotnik in Sonic the Hedgehog and its sequel Wild, funny roles that reminded people of the old Jim, full of energy and madness. But even while doing those roles, Jim stayed grounded. He didn't do press tours or chase attention. He acted when he wanted and disappeared again when he needed silence. Jim began to share powerful speeches online, motivational talks, graduation addresses, and deep reflections on ego, fear, and creativity. One of his most famous moments was his speech at Maharishi University, where he said, "So many of us choose our path out of fear disguised as practicality. What we really want seems impossibly out of reach, so we never dare to ask the universe for it. I'm saying I'm the proof. You can ask the universe for it. That speech went viral. Millions watched it. Young people said it changed their lives. In another moment, he said, "The effect you have on others is the most valuable currency there is." He was no longer just a comedian. He had become a philosopher, a teacher, a guide for lost souls. Jim Carrey eventually said he was retiring from acting, explaining, "I've done enough. I like my quiet life." Now he lives simply, painting, writing, walking in nature, sitting in silence. He is not chasing anything, proving anything, or seeking attention. He is just being. The man who looked beyond the curtain. Jim Carrey's truth about death, love, God, and the real meaning of life emerged after years of silence, heartbreak, and transformation. He spoke about his daughter, Jane Erin Carrey, his only child with his first wife, Melissa Womer. When Jim became famous, he was constantly working and often away from home. He admitted later that he made mistakes. Not because he didn't care, but because he didn't know how to balance it all. "I was chasing success," he said, not realizing that the greatest success is being present. Jane grew into a singer-songwriter and even auditioned for American Idol without using her father's name. Jim quietly supported her, staying out of the spotlight. Their relationship deepened in private, built on quiet love and mutual respect, not fame. After losing Catriona White, Jim's understanding of death changed forever. He said, "Catriona's passing didn't destroy me. It woke me up. It made me realize how temporary this whole game is. All the things we think are important, money, fame, approval, are dust." He began to see death as a transition, not an end. He said, "The body dies, the mind fades, but the awareness remains. What you truly are is not your name, not your story. You are what watches all of it." He practiced letting go, learning to die before dying, to release the ego while still alive. This brought him peace. "When you stop fearing death," he said, "you start living with pure honesty." Jim's view of God also changed. Raised Catholic, he once prayed to a distant deity, but later said, "God is not outside you. God is the space inside you, the silence, the peace, the awareness. That's God." He felt that everything is connected. People, trees, animals, oceans, light, space, and that there is no separation. He stopped asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and started asking, "What is life trying to teach me?" His view on love. Jim experienced many forms of love: romance, heartbreak, grief, and loss, but later said, "Love is not ownership. Love is not control. Love is not performance. Love is presence. Love is acceptance." He believed that the deepest love is seeing someone fully without trying to fix or change them. "You can't truly love someone else if you are still pretending to be someone you're not," he said. So he stopped chasing relationships and began building a relationship with his true self. Not the actor, not the mask, just Jim. His thoughts on fame and money. At the height of his career, Jim Carrey was one of the highest paid actors in history. But none of it brought real joy. He once said, "I wish everyone could become rich and famous and get everything they ever dreamed of so they'd see that's not the answer." He called fame a drug, a temporary high that leaves you emptier each time. "Money can buy comfort," he said, "but it can't buy peace. Success can build your image, but not your soul." He gave away much of his wealth, stopped collecting things, and stopped playing the Hollywood game. "I don't need anything," he said. "I just need to be free from needing." In that freedom, he found peace. His message to the world. Jim told his fans, "You don't have to be me to be free." He didn't want followers, he wanted people to be themselves. "You don't have to become famous or lose everything to wake up," he said. "You just need to stop pretending. Stop performing. Stop trying to be enough. You already are." He encouraged young people to create art for meaning, not money, and to live with honesty, not for applause. His life now. Today, Jim Carrey lives quietly in California. He wakes with the sun, paints, writes, walks, and meditates. He doesn't care about trends, fame, or social media. Only about stillness, beauty, and truth. When asked if he's happy, he replied, "I don't even use the word happy anymore. I prefer peaceful because happiness comes and goes. Peace stays." He has become a man of stillness, meditating, smiling, and letting the world pass gently by. His legacy. People will always remember Jim Carrey as the wild, hilarious comedian of the 1990s, but his true legacy runs deeper. He will be remembered as the man who spoke openly about depression, revealed the emptiness of fame, and taught millions the power of letting go. He showed us that it's okay to be confused, lost, broken, and imperfect, because in letting go of who you think you should be, you become free to be who you are. Jim taught that peace is not something you find in the world. It's what you find when you stop looking for it. His story doesn't end with fame or tragedy, but with peace. In a quiet room, with a still mind and a full heart. He came into the world as a poor boy from Canada, became the face of global laughter, broke, questioned, healed, and finally let go. And in that letting go, he found something rare and beautiful, real peace. This is not just a biography. This is an awakening. The story of a man who played every role and finally became himself.